Way up high in the mountains of eastern Ladakh, a new tunnel just quietly opened for business. Now, there wasn't a huge ceremony, but don't let that fool you. Today, we're going to break down why this Shyok tunnel is probably one of the most important pieces of strategic infrastructure India has built in years. So that's the big question, right? If this thing is such a game changer, why the quiet launch? Well, as we're about to see, that low-key inauguration is actually the perfect cover for what is a massive, fundamental shift in India's entire border strategy. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the tunnel itself and exactly where it is. Then, we'll dive into why it's such a big deal for countering China, how it helps way more than just the military, and finally, what this all tells us about India's brand new border doctrine. Let's get into it. So what exactly happened here? Well, India's defense minister recently cut the ribbon on the Shyok tunnel. But here's the really interesting part. It wasn't a solo event. This tunnel was unveiled as just one piece of a package of 124 other projects. So this wasn't just about opening a tunnel. It was about sending a major message. Okay, let's get our bearings. With any project like this, it's all about location, location, location. So where exactly is this tunnel, and what makes this specific spot so incredibly important? The tunnel sits on this absolutely critical road called the DSDBO road. And if you look at a map, you'll see it runs right alongside the line of actual control. That's the de facto and often disputed border with China. Being this close to the frontier is everything. It basically creates a protected, all-weather lifeline to one of the most contested places on Earth. We're talking 920 meters long. That's nearly a full kilometer. You know, building anything in this kind of terrain is a monumental challenge. So the engineers had to get creative and use a really specific construction method just to pull this off. They used what's called a cut and cover technique. The idea is actually pretty simple. You dig a massive trench. You build a super strong concrete box tunnel right inside it, and then you just cover it all back up with the earth. It's a really effective way to bypass some of the most treacherous, avalanche-prone parts of the landscape. And this brings us to the absolute core of why this tunnel exists, its military value. So let's break down how this single stretch of road, now underground, completely changes the strategic math in this very tense region. The number one goal here is to guarantee access to a place called Dalit Beg Oldi, or DBO. DBO is one of India's most important and isolated military bases, sitting just a stone's throw from the critical Karakoram Pass. The logic is simple. If you can't get supplies to DBO, you can't defend that entire sector. Just think about the advantages this unlocks. Suddenly, you have all-weather connectivity, meaning troops and supplies can move even in the middle of a brutal Himalayan winter. Everything gets faster, it's way more reliable, and it means you're not so dependent on incredibly expensive supply flights. But maybe the biggest point is that it helps India counter China's own massive infrastructure buildup, helping to level the playing field. I mean, before this tunnel, that road was a logistical nightmare. It was constantly being shut down by avalanches, sudden flash floods, and landslides. This tunnel basically weatherproofs the entire route, making sure that the lifeline to the front stays open 365 days a year, no matter what Mother Nature throws at it. And we're not just talking about moving a few trucks and jeeps here. This tunnel is built to handle the heavy stuff. We're talking mobile artillery systems, massive fuel tankers, convoys of ammunition. Before, getting that kind of equipment up there was a huge, risky, and expensive operation involving aircraft. Now, India can sustain its forces on the front line for much, much longer. That is a massive strategic plus. But hey, it's not all about tanks and military convoys. Big infrastructure projects like this always have a ripple effect, and the Shyok tunnel is a perfect example of how something built for military reasons can end up totally transforming the lives of everyday people in the region. Just try to imagine being completely cut off from the rest of the country for months every single winter. For the local people of Ladakh, this tunnel changes everything. It means reliable access to hospitals, to markets, a steady flow of essential goods, and it opens the door to new jobs through tourism. It really is a lifeline in every sense of the word. So let's zoom out for a second, because this tunnel isn't just a one-off project. It's really a single piece in a much larger strategic puzzle, and it tells us a lot about a fundamental shift in how India is now thinking about its borders. Yeah, like we said at the start, this tunnel was launched alongside over 100 other projects. Bridges, roads, airfields, you name it. And this isn't just happening in Ladakh. It's a massive, coordinated, nationwide push happening in all the border states, from Arunachal Pradesh to Uttarakhand. This is a complete 180 from India's old strategy. For decades after the 1962 war with China, the thinking was actually to leave the border areas undeveloped. The fear was that an enemy could use those very roads against India. Well, that idea is completely out the window now. The new thinking is that roads are force multipliers. They let you move your own forces faster, respond to threats quicker, and deter a conflict before it even starts. And really, it all boils down to this one powerful idea. Infrastructure is national security. The new doctrine isn't just about building forts and bunkers anymore. It's about using concrete and steel, roads, bridges, and tunnels as a primary tool to project power and solidify your claim over these remote, contested territories. And that leaves us with one final, really critical question to chew on. This whole infrastructure race is designed to make the border more secure, right? But with both India and China building more and more, faster and faster, you have to ask, are all these roads and tunnels actually building a more stable peace? Or are they just paving a faster highway to the next conflict?